4, 3.
We'll do it live.
Now we're live! Erin Kennedy. The general craziness of it, the impact on your life.
We have gone through so many stories and we said, you know what? This should not be kept to the two of us.
It's Erin's turn.
Hi.
Hi, Erin.
How are you?
Doing good.
We're making the dream work these days, aren't we?
I mean, girl, we are hustling.
We are.
Like,
we are.
in
But
all the
kinda
places.
not.
But kind of not.
I think we make things harder than they ever have to be.
Yes. What is
why.
that? What does that say about us?
I don't know. I think you and I both have a compulsion to want to do everything right, you know,
Yes.
And
And
I-
quickly.
and quickly. And when we don't, we feel very strange about it.
Yes. I'm still kind of dealing with, and I think that is because for our first 15 years in the working world, you needed to be right and you needed to be fast. So now
that is right.
it's very difficult to realize you don't have to be
So
fast. You should still be right.
I want to do a separate episode because of all the markets, I think I've said this before, I didn't fit into Ohio the most.
Okay.
And one piece of feedback that I got was that, Erin, you don't have to be right all the time. You can mispronounce the name of a town, which you might as well have seen my face melt when it,
why
fir-
would
well,
I
First
do
of all, I'm
that?
not going to do that. But the reason I didn't fit in Ohio, they said this is real feedback, you guys. I'm not just saying that. You're too perfect. Your makeup's too perfect. Your hair's too perfect. So I think he was saying, don't worry, you can make a mistake so that it'll make you more real. And I'm
They
thinking,
wanted you to
that's
be
not my
like
job.
homegrown, corn-fed, aha.
Oh my gosh, I've told you this before. I'm sorry, we're going off on a tangent here, but they said we want somebody who's more folksy, right?
Folksy. That's
Told
I
you this.
wouldn't use that word for you, really.
A lot of adjectives. Folksy is not one of them.
I could pull that off. I could do folksy, betcha.
What they wanted was silly. They wanted, yes. Well, anywho. So let's talk about pregnancy, though. Let's talk about being a man of the people. Oh, Ohio is also where I came up with this, which I didn't really have to employ with you, but this was Chris Ty will get this. Chris Ty, if you're watching. Because all of our consultants wanted us to be like, I am just like you. So I would say these things on air, which would be like, I like Church's chicken.
Just like you.
I like NASCAR.
Just like you.
Just like you.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you are a human being who probably doesn't like Church's chicken or NASCAR.
I would eat Church's chicken. NASCAR.
I could eat some fried chicken like right now.
Right.
I'm hungry. I didn't have lunch yet.
But Ohio was where I had my first baby. Elliot was born in Westlake, Ohio. As you had mentioned,
working in Cleveland, if you don't know the geography of Ohio.
Working in Cleveland, market 18 out of 212. I knew I didn't want to have, so Matt and I met in college, we were together a very long time, but we very purposefully waited to have kids because I really loved being with him.
And you were building a career. Did that play into it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I, with the volatility of TV news and where you are in your contract, like you mentioned, it's always a consideration. And of course, as you hear before, like you can't wait for the right time to have kids because then you'll never have kids, right?
Oh yeah. If you wait for the perfect moment, you're going to be, like 65, like, oops.
Right. So we were in Ohio and I was still in my first contract.
How old were you?
I was 32 when he was born. So I guess I was probably pregnant at 31.
Okay.
I knew the ground was shifting under us in Ohio because this is where we had consultants all the time. We were not first place.
Which is a dead giveaway, by the way. Like, if you're consultant free and your ratings are good, you're probably pretty all right.
Yeah.
Consultants every whip stitch, you're in trouble. Yeah.
This station too would very consistently change anchors. And I remember that I was going to go on a trip with Matt to Vietnam, which had always been on our bucket list. Before we started having kids, we wanted to go. And I remember at that point, already feeling I should buy trip insurance because I'm afraid that they might fire me before I even go to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, I found out I was pregnant in Vietnam.
Which
So I come back and I know that the ground is shifting still. And I said, you know what? I'm going to cut this off at the pass. I'm going to tell them I'm pregnant, and maybe that will help me keep my job.
Okay. So you were trying to use what was happening against you for you.
I was.
Sort of.
I was. Well, and also,
appreciate
but this,
Yeah, do
this
what you
isn't
can do,
just-
you know?
Yeah, this isn't just me being like looking for a litigious moment. This was me again with my former news director's voice in my head. You're never more popular on TV as when you're pregnant on TV. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to want a pregnant lady around. Okay, so
Right.
I think that it was one conversation. I went into my news director's office to tell him I was pregnant, and also to ask if we could do a clothing exchange because, as you've mentioned before,
Yeah.
it's so much money. So maybe we could get a trade where some
like pee in the pot or something.
Yeah. Erin's wardrobe sponsored by Pee in the Pot. Thank you. I went in and I said, you know, I'd like to talk about doing this clothing exchange for my maternity leave because I had made this appointment with him to talk about it. And he said,
Wait. You had already told him previously that you were pregnant.
I had, yes. I was trying, yes. Two separate. Look, Erin's pregnant. Erin's setting a meeting to talk about a clothing exchange.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, I wanted to talk about, you know, whether or not this is possible that we could do some sort of a trade. And he said, oh, that's what you want to talk about? I thought you wanted to talk about the anchor changes.
Which you didn't know about.
No.
Had
I
anyone
said,
been told?
Nope.
Why would he think you would know that?
Nope. I said, what?
What anchor changes? So this is the first you're hearing about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I knew things were like this, and then I go in and it was like, boom.
Did your stomach drop? Like, what went through your mind?
You know, this is so funny, Megan, that I still can't, I'm trying to put this together in a timeline. I think that they said, hey, I think maybe that was when they dropped the bomb. They said, essentially, okay, I cannot remember. It was either that same day or like the next day where it had to have been the same day because I remember it was like, I felt blindsided.
Yeah.
They said, essentially, effective tomorrow, you're reporting 5 days a week. So
going from being the morning anchor, is that right?
Right.
And then spell this out though real quick. That means she knew where she was going to be sitting. She knew she was going to be inside. She knew what her schedule was for the most part, barring any breaking news. And you knew that you were going to be like safe in a place where you could go to the bathroom when you need to and whatever, as you are now a newly pregnant for the first time person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now being told you have to be reporting, you're like, oh dear
Lord.
Lord.
So the only contracts are meant to protect the station. We've talked about that before. Yeah. The only thing that it helps with you on TV is that they're guaranteed to pay you your salary. So while I was demoted to reporting, and I don't mean that as a dig to reporting at all. It just generally that position is lower on the pay scale. They still had to pay me my anchor salary while I was reporting 5 days a week.
But this was kind of sort of them letting you know, like, we don't value you anymore. Like, you want to be valued. So heads up, we're going to put you out on the street because we're still going to get our money's worth because we still have to pay you. But you should start looking, basically.
Well, no, this is the funny thing, Megan. They really liked me. And I'm going to say this too. I'm a really great reporter, you know? So I did, fantastic reporting. And so this was coming towards the tail end of my 2-year firm, 3-year contract. So coming towards the end of my 2-year firm where they had to pay me my salary.
Yeah.
I think it was 5 months left on it. I was a reporter. And then they did renew me for that 3rd year under a reporter salary. So I did take a $30,000 pay cut. but that was still when I was very pregnant, and my intention was just to get through the pregnancy.
Yeah. Let
Right.
me just survive this. Okay. All right.
That being said, of course, you met me when I was 9 months pregnant. We will get into that. Let's go chronologically though. So all of a sudden I was reporting 5 days a week, and this was the polar vortex, which you remember
yeah.
because it was just as affected in
Yeah.
Ohio, being on one of the Great Lakes, as it was in Chicago. And I just remember being so very pregnant and, of course, so uncomfortable. And also, when you get very cold and you're very pregnant, I would get the Braxton Hicks contractions, you know? And then depending on where we were, because Akron was one of the markets, you know, you might be driving for an hour. Also, I hate driving. I have a terrible sense of direction. I get lost all the time. So there was one moment where I think that I was like maybe 8 months pregnant, maybe 7.5, where I was trying to work from the station as much as I could. Again, to have access to a bathroom
Yep,
and be
of
warm and
course.
everything
All
else.
the reasons. Yeah.
And then would meet the photog at my live destination, but I would still have to drive there. So there was one day where I am just slammed. I have to drive to it was the Browns football stadium headquarters, which I'd never been there before. I didn't know how to get there, and I'm slammed. I'm really late on time. I gave my package to, you know, an in-house editor to get, and I had to get to my photog to do my live shot. I go down into the garage and I get into one of these sedans, and I'm a tiny-ish person, and the chair was like this. And I could move it like this, and I could move it like this, but I could not open the gosh darn thing. So I am down in the garage just like screaming, because the last thing that you want to do is be late for your live shot too, right?
Right. Now you're like under unnecessary pressure. And okay. I feel
So
you
I
here.
end up having to go back into the newsroom and say, I can't open the chair. I can't drive because of this human being that is crushing my kidneys. So the assistant news director comes down. She's trying to figure out how to move the chair. And so finally they just say, never mind your live shots upstairs, go up on the balcony. You can just do a live shot from here. So that was a moment where I did ask my doctor. I said, I want to note that I'm in-house for all live shots now, or indoors. And so they were very accommodating for that. So if I had to be live, it was either in the studio or at the balcony shot or inside a place. So the last live shot that I had was actually inside the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it was, Elliot was due 3 days from now, and he was 2 days early. The only baby who came early. Way to go, Elliot. But I remember sitting there feeling really uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
And that is my first baby story. So I was out on maternity leave, and we've talked before about how ego is a big part of this job.
It's a huge part of the job. You have to have an ego to want to put yourself on camera.
Right.
Period. I think some kind of ego. Yeah.
When they said, Erin, we don't want you anchoring mornings anymore,
you were pissed.
Erin did not take that well.
No, Erin.
Erin would have been running out the door had she not been 3 months pregnant.
Yes. Do you hear my cuckoo clock, by the way? No, it just stopped. Right in time. Yeah, go ahead.
So my intention was to get through my maternity leave. I'm sorry, my maternity there and my maternity leave.
Yes.
When I was on Megan, I had my agent looking for jobs, you know, immediately.
Sorry.
That is okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I am in my house in Ohio with Elliot in a baby carrier, bouncing on the bouncy ball and doing job interviews on the phone. Doing phoners, you know.
You're like, I don't belong on the streets because now I have a baby too. I want to be knowing what I'm doing, being home.
So they had offered me weekend mornings in the interim in Ohio.
But you didn't want that.
To be honest, Megan, I was too angry to do anything. They could have offered me any job there and I would have said no. I was too upset. I'm sorry. My ego was it was hurt.
Yeah, you were butthurt.
So one of those jobs happened to be at Chicago. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go in as Erin, the humpback whale, interviewing in the one dress that fits me. I was just a few days away from being banned from getting on an airplane pregnant, you know? and I go there and meet you all, and you're lovely and wonderful. And I'm I'm just like, who knows how do you answer these questions?
Well, I remember thinking the following. First of all, we just knew that Erin Kennedy was coming. And I was like, okay, whoever that is, whatever, we'll fix, because we'd had a couple through already, right? Trying to find like a fit, right?
Right.
To go to eat across the street and at lunch and see if there's a fit. Okay. So Erin walks in. I was like, holy, she's really pregnant. And I remember thinking like, oh, we might go into labor during this audition.
Besides the fact
I loved
that
you and I thought you were fabulous, but it was like, we were all like, okay.
And I knew that you guys had already been searching for that job for a very long time. And so I was concerned that the fact that it was obviously that I was going to need another 3 months.
What did another 3 months matter, Erin, at that point?
Yeah, well, so yes, I was very pregnant when I interviewed there. And thank goodness I got the job.
So baby number 2, Maya, we were working together.
Baby number 2, Maya.
At that point, I feel
I was living in Chicago
and some modicum of like security. You felt kind of okay-ish, right? With Maya.
A modicum. Yes. Always a modicum.
There's always just a modicum.
Yeah.
But that was your craziest having the baby story.
So we lived a block from our hospital, thank the goodness, because my intention was always to labor at home as long as I could.
Which I thought you were crazy, by the way. I was like, why are you not going immediately?
Yeah. And so I labored at home, and my husband's aunt who lived nearby was going to come and watch Elliot. We couldn't get a hold of her. Anyway, that being said, she came, I walked down the stairs and I felt Maya's head, and so I literally was on my knees in the car driving to the hospital, and Matt was going like wrong ways on one ways to get there. He pulled up at like 6 a.m. and Maya came at 6:08, I want to say it was. And so I'm in the hospital room, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you were almost on the news having a baby in the car." And I was like, "You have no idea."
Yeah. That would have really been on the news.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God, Erin. So, but that one you survived that. That was fine. You were back. You then had 2 kids. Then the third one, it's a smidge different.
Yeah, well, and I should say too, I did nurse and pump, and that was nice for me because I did fit it into my schedule, and it was a good almost break from the day too. Go away because they had a really nice women's lounge, they called it, which was just a mini fridge and a couch,
And see that was made very different for you because you were the anchor in the morning, not leaving the studio. It's a different story if you're like a reporter and you're out doing God knows what in God knows what live truck. Like there's much more.
Right. Well, Susanna Song was pregnant when I was pregnant, and then she had her baby. So she would do her morning show hits and then come back, always effort to come back to the studio, to the station to pump. So she would always get dealer's choice whenever she needed because.
Right. Whenever she had time.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Comrades was, it was what it was. I still feel like, Megan, per the usual, we had gone through, I don't know, was it 4 co-anchors or something at that point? So you still feel the ground shifting beneath you and going
you're not top on the ratings. Someone has to take the fall. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, is it management? Is it the people on the air? Is it the people who are producing the show? Very rarely is it the people who are producing the show at the local TV level. I think it happens quite a bit at the network, because you've paid $10 million for a big name star and they're not the problem. Okay, so how can we produce the show differently? But at the local level, typically it's going to fall on the talent. It's going to be like, oh, people don't like fill in the blank. Yeah. So there had been a lot of changes. And we had survived many of them, but not all of them. Clearly.
Yeah. And so, it's, of course, I'm not saying that this is specific to any one station or any market.
No.
Going on maternity leave for 3 months is always a little bit nerve-wracking.
It is. Yes. Yes. Especially if you're not at the number 1 station. And especially if you already would be a little smidge uncomfortable anyway. And I feel like the anchors often take the heat more than reporters or weather people typically. If they're going to do a reboot of stuff, weather has a better chance of surviving that reboot. Simply because usually the weather person is pretty generally well liked and your part in the show is smaller, usually, right? Like you guys are there from beginning of the show to the end of the show if you're an anchor. So if they're gonna place blame, which it never should be, but if they're gonna place blame on people, they can who's on most, right? Like, oh, okay, that's where the problem is. Like that's how it works, usually.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it should, but it does.
Yeah. So that's my story. That's all I got. It's only on your end for what it's worth.
I mean, I'm just basically, I don't know if it's my computer where I love the internet, but I also hate the internet.
I know, I hear you. Gremlins everywhere.
I know.
Please, I also want to get a reporter on who has been pregnant and reporting in the field and pumping in the field and stuff too. I think that we all have our very unique stories, but are all very interesting to hear. So
they're not normal. Like when you add that business into it, it's not like you're at a regular desk job. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure other people who have like they're doctors or something, they've probably got some crazy stuff going on too. Yeah. Truck driver, you're God knows where,
Right. Yeah, no, it's true.
But you don't have to look good too. So
yeah. Please like and subscribe, turn on notifications, tell your friends. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, Megan.